Hello, writers. Come write with me. My name is Michaela Greenwood. I create worlds for mind adventures. Welcome to my channel, Write with Michaela. I'm very excited to have you here on my channel. We're going into the third year. We've had 2 complete years, and I'm very excited to have you here on my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so you can go on this journey with me. Today is story time. The day of our chapter exchange. You give me a chapter, I give you a chapter, and it's much healthier than a cookie exchange. If you are writing with me and you wish to exchange chapters, then send your chapter with written permission to writewithmichaela@gmail.com. And that will be posted in the description below. It will be posted at the end of the video, where you can take Write with Michaela and take out the spaces and just put the @ in gmail.com, and there you have it. I look so forward to reading your chapters and seeing your ideas and seeing how you put things together. All chapters are writing prompts read on the channel, whether they are mine or another writer's work, are copyright protected material. No one may use any part in writing their own story. This story is PG-13, so if you're under 13 years of age, you need parental guidance. The story is in its rough draft stage, just as the last stories we've heard. The title of this story is Elloni's Pride, and today we are reading chapter 26 out of book 3. If you would like to read along, then send to the email as stated earlier. Request a PDF of the chapter. Make sure you are specific. Now, before we start today, I decided to change the subtitle of the book, because it was Elloni's Pride, and then book 3 was called Gaining Freedom. And I changed that to Fighting for Freedom. And there's a lot more fights in the book than there is gaining, so it's more descriptive. Also, it gets a little alliteration in there, if you remember that term from season 1. So the subtitle is changing to Fighting for Freedom. So you didn't miss anything if you thought it was Gaining Freedom and now it's Fighting for Freedom. So that it was a change. And that's my prerogative. I'm a writer. I get to change it. You are a writer. You get to change things for yourself. So now, let's start. Elloni's Pride, Book 3, Fighting for Freedom, Chapter 26, Final Battle. King Fate-Right couldn't sleep. He roused his soldiers in pre-dawn. Cephalin wanted to know what was going on, and before he left their chambers, he told her, "Today is the day that determines everything." Cephalin hadn't liked that statement, but knew he felt it deep within himself. The full force of soldiers, Linkers, Cinder's group, and Valsar's group, the full force of soldiers, Linkers, Cinder's group, and Valsar's group was going out in the pre-dawn. They were only leaving a minimal number of Linkers to patrol, but the Linkers patrolling included some of the younger ones. Everyone could feel the tension within themselves, and the air felt like it was popping. Dragons usually didn't like to fly in the dark, but they flew out before the sun peaked above the horizon, and they would surround Droft's strong kingdom just as the rays of the sun shone. Kilgore roused his group of dragons. He thought to his pride, "Gird yourselves today. We haven't the leisure for breakfast. Let us fly out and finish this." King Fate-Right blew a long note, and they unleashed the fury of their dragon's breath on the armament of the castle. Bremen had fought with dragons some last night before he faded off to sleep, and earth dragons were to release their breaths in front of the gates and doors. Water dragons were to release their breaths on the walls and into the windows. Fire dragons were to catch roots and anything else on fire, and the wind dragons were to fly behind the fire dragons so they could increase the intensity of the fires. That left the mine dragons to do anything else that they saw fit. King Damantade's dragons scrambled to get the dragons when the army appeared before them and around them. They blew their own horns, but water dragons drowned those blowing the horns, and the water drowned out the sounds. Both Damantade brothers ran outside to see what was going on, and then right behind them a pile of rocks and dirt landed so they could not get back inside. They were thankful they had on their suits of armor. King Maltaron's shoulders still hurt him tremendously, but he would deal with the pain. They both ran around to the dragon courtyard to get the dragons. They started shouting for the soldiers to remove the dirt and rocks. King Crucifer Damantade ordered some soldiers to go through the castle to the dragon caverns and have the dragons help bust down the top half of the doors. Soldiers weren't sure how to get in, and when King Crucifer saw their hesitation, he yelled, "Climb through a window if you have to." At the same time, King Maltaron Damantade was thinking with his dragon that he needed to bust through the door. He thought that they were under attack and they needed help immediately. Soon his dragon busted through the door, and King Maltaron mounted and flew into battle. His soldiers followed right behind. When King Fate-Right saw the other armor, he knew his feelings were right. Thankfully, they had managed to surprise their enemies, and they had killed many before they had been able to mount their dragons. No one could watch all of the battle. Everyone was fighting everywhere. The Linkers were young, and they didn't have the physical strength of the soldiers, but they had their charms. Just when things seemed bad for several fighting for King Fate-Right, then Kelgor's group flew in, and they protected the Linkers and everyone else. Fire and water spewed and sprayed. Hot rocks flew. Sharp rocks flew. The enemy soldiers were using their shields as much as they were their swords, but there were still a great number of enemies and enemy dragons. Linkers were using many charms, including having wooden walls appear in the middle of the air, which even some of them had to veer away from to avoid. Then King Crucifer Damantade once again spotted Browser, so he signaled his brother. Several commanders from both brothers saw the signal, and they headed to surround Browser. Browser received, "Shrink you and your dragon to teensy-weensy death size." Browser thought, "Is this Broman? That doesn't make sense." Broman flew Hagar into where Browser was, but he was invisible. Browser didn't get another response, and he saw all the soldiers and the two kings coming for him. So he shrank down as 1,000th of a percent of normal. King Fate-Right, Cinder, Balsaroth, and Balsaroth's sons moved to surround the soldiers around Browser, but none knew Broman's thoughts. When they saw Browser seemingly disappeared, they continued. Then suddenly Broman and Hagar became visible, and Broman was 800% his size. Broman had learned a charm that talked about a vortex. Broman hadn't known what a vortex was, but now the tailor matched to him had said it would make him go round and round very fast. Broman had Hagar use the word Vitr-Mar with his breath, and he cast the charm. Broman didn't know what all the words meant that translated to velocity or revolutions, so he just put in some numbers. The entire battle paused as the colossal red dragon breathed an extra large and wide flame as the dragon spun around 8 times very quickly. Olivia thought with Elloni that Broman used too much magic and what they could do to fly through the flame. Elloni didn't know a charm. Browser had sank invisibly before he shrank. He watched above him as Broman spun. He thought to Broman, "Shrink and I'll catch you." Broman shrank and Browser enlarged himself in Dronstein. Browser caught Broman and Hagar and quickly put them in a pouch. He didn't know how long they would be small, but he had to face the circle of people left around him. Broman had done well and burnt 12, of them. King Fatelight's group didn't wait. They attacked, and everyone else returned their focus to their own battles. Suddenly, as Kala flew around, she saw the soldier that had cut Lydia down. What she didn't know was she was actually recognized the dust around him. So she pursued him. Sir Bradley instantly realized the emotion Kala was using to fight, so he joined her in battle. Kosher, however, saw a soldier get his helmet knocked off, and he recognized him as a soldier that had chopped off his father's head, so he pursued him. Trenton thought to several linkers about the emotion he was seeing in the two, so several flew over to help Kosher and several to help Kala. Balsaroth had trained his linkers well, and they knew to watch for emotion, so they helped as well. King Fatebright glanced around the battle. They had done well, but they were losing momentum, and he was having trouble fighting both brothers and their armies. Even though it seemed like King Dementade of the north was more interested in killing Browser than him, he spent a good quarter of an hour fighting both brothers with just him and Browser, because his commanders were fighting King Dementade's commanders and the brothers' commanders. He signaled for his group to fly away. He thought, if there is a Kelgor who gets my thoughts, we are flying south. We can't continue today. He received. I understand. There seem to be more soldiers and dragons today. King Fatebright didn't have the time to think more with the dragon, so he enlarged himself and his dragon, and had his dragon release her water breath. He didn't give her the word Marine, but Ashimon knew the word from Broman's teachings. So she breathed a great burst of water, and the water knocked both Dementaide brothers off their dragons. King Fatebright shrank back to normal size and then turned to fly south. After a few minutes, he turned invisible. King Kelgor's group stayed until the last fighter had headed south, turned invisible, and then they too flew south and turned invisible. Browser glanced over his shoulder. He knew if Broman could see all the invisible road dragons, he would be proud of them. King Maltaron Dementaide gathered his soldiers, and he told them the plans. They gathered all the soldiers they had left, and they left only normal soldiers for the kingdom. All dragon riders were flying out with them, and they were flying north. King Fatebright stopped flying south. After he made sure their enemies weren't pursuing them, he turned visible. The rest also turned visible, some because they dropped the invisibility and some because the time ran out on their spells. As he finished his counts, he started receiving thoughts from Kempton, Corton, and several other linkers who were flying patrol. King Fatebright looked around his group, and he very gravely said, "They found us." The linkers flying patrol thought they were invisible, but both kings, with their full forces, are at our mountains. I can cast the haze charm, stated Browser. He immediately started the charm. Everyone had their hearts in their throats. Browser's group knew that invisibility would not help the people because the trackers were very good. Everyone turned their dragons around to head home. Elloni had connected with Kilgore and thought to him what the haze charm would do. Kilgore wanted a conference with sPride first. Soon Browser had cast the charm, and everyone entered except Libya and Elloni. Kilgore's group wanted to help, so Libya cast the haze charm on them. Nayli saw some black dragons landing near the gardens, along with other dragons she didn't recognize. She directed her dragon, Nefton, to fly low and to shoot sharp rocks. Thankfully, Nefton remembered the words he needed and shot rocks. Hector was invisible, and he saw the soldiers landing. He was ushering the invisible people inside. Then he saw Nayli. He wanted to shout no and to tell her to fly away, but the sharp rocks were spraying everywhere. Some of the rocks even hit the garden. The people were starting to push and to run. Hector thought, Browther, if you hear me, calm the people and take them far down the tunnel. Take them as far as you can. Browther responded positively. Some people in their chambers were aware, and they were already going in deeper. Sophie wanted to help the people, but Sylvie and Vixie each grabbed her arm and pulled her down the hall. They told her that she was too close to her delivery. Sophie relented because she was already getting contractions, and the two women with her were having to extend their invisibilities over her. Selflyn thought to herself, how did they find us? But there was no answer to her question. The soldiers that had landed shielded themselves from the sharp rocks, and then they mounted their dragons and took off after the little girl. Nefton had commands from Nayli to attack again, but he saw the soldiers mounting, so he turned around and flew over the mountain ridge. Then suddenly before Nayli and Nefton were all of their troops and linkers. Nefton easily glided between the friendly dragons. King Fateride's group heard a horn blowing, and they saw 4 dragons pursuing Nayli. King Fateride wanted someone to get Nayli to someplace safe, but he didn't know any charm to use. Then he thought of the charm to protect from sight, sound, and injury. He said the part about injury and spread it over Nayli. Several others wanted Nayli protected as well, so they also said the charm and spread it over her. King Fateride's group spread out, and the linkers patrolling turned visible and started helping. Many of the linkers patrolling were younger, and they didn't have all of the training, but they had their charms, and they had the stories of the previous battles. This battle was fierce. It had started before Libya came out of the haze with the rogue dragons. Everyone knew this was it. The enemies had found their hiding place, and if they didn't finish this battle, they would never have freedom. The linkers from Underwood Village had seen the soldiers pursuing Nayli, and they remembered the night in their village where they hid. They had their backs to the fire. Trenton knew that these soldiers would kill his 2 children if they had the chance. After a little bit, Sir Bradley received, "Where am I?" Sir Bradley looked around and then realized the thoughts were from Broman. He thought to Browser to let Broman and Hagar out of his pouch. Browser, of course, was in the middle of a group of soldiers, so he thought back to hang on a minute. He fought the soldiers surrounding him, and then he released Broman and Hagar. Broman wasn't exactly on Hagar, but he used a rope charm and had the loop go around Hagar's neck. He then had the rope shrink in length. Bolton and several other men were at the edges of the mountain wall inside the ring. They were a last defense, so the soldiers could not go in the caverns. Some had a little training, but most would be no match to trained soldiers. Bolton saw Broman falling. He said quietly to himself, "Come on, son." He saw the rope, and he cheered in his heart. Nymph was helping Broman by telling him some charms to help him get back on Hagar, and finally Broman was successful. Everyone cheered a little. Broman thought to Trenton about what he did to make himself look like 2 or 3 people, and his dragon looked like 2 or 3. Trenton didn't totally remember, but he thought what he remembered. Commander Kupchak was helping Browser when the enemy suddenly turned and started fighting him. A couple more commanders started helping him as well. While everyone was busy, a couple of trackers landed inside the mountain ring. Broman received, "I need the word for fire." Broman didn't know who thought with him, but he just thought the word. Bolton knew he couldn't fight the soldiers, so he slipped away from them, from the mountain wall to one of their fires that the people didn't manage to put out when the linkers saw the enemies. He grabbed an end of a thick stick that was well beyond his fire circle. He rushed towards the 2 soldiers who were walking close to where Hector and several others should be. He said the words Vichmar and Venishima. Hector saw it first, and he turned and ran into the tunnel. The fire on the floating log grew much bigger, and it rushed towards the trackers. The trackers caught fire, and the fire was hot. The 2 dragons turned to the floating log to breathe their breath. One was a water dragon, one was wind. "Look out," called Hushman. He ran invisibly toward the floating log. He was going to try to knock whosoever down because he didn't know what breath the dragons had. Bolton spun towards the dragons and said the words again, and then he repeated them. The fire grew and went towards the dragons. The dragons lifted up in the air. King Fateride had seen the fire, and now he saw the dragons. He realized that soldiers might be trying to get into the tunnel, into the mountains, to his people. He started motioning for some soldiers to fly in the ring to check things out. Then several things happened at once. One of the enemy's commanders cut down 2 of King Fateride's commanders, Commander Carget and Commander Nileston, and they knocked Commander Kupchak from his dragon. Kilgore flew under Commander Kuchov, and several people thought charms to Commander Kuchov to stay on. Browser just thought a charm to stay on, as did several others, but some thought the charm to make a saddle. The fall shook Commander Kuchov up a bit, but he said a charm to stay on. Then he rubbed Kilgore's neck. "Thanks for catching me," Kilgore thought. "I hope you know some of Master Bowman's words, because soldiers should not target little girls. I think the one little girl is too little, but her dragon thought responses to me of why she is out here." Commander Kuchov knew several words, but first he verified what type of breath Kilgore had, and Kilgore confirmed that he breathed fire. Several from King Fate-Ride's group flew lower in the mountain ring to ascertain what was going on, but that gave Volserath the idea to check the entrance on the north side of the mountains, where the people used the outhouses. Indeed, several trackers were there, so Volserath and 2 sons followed the trackers into the mountains from the north. The older linkers were protecting the younger linkers, and everyone was flying here and there. The vicious enemies severely cut several linkers on an arm or leg, including Kosher and Trenton. Both thought to their tailor to see if the tailors could stitch them up. The tailors used charms. They couldn't stitch. Browser saw Broman flying around, and he knew Broman was going to enlarge himself. So Browser set an invisibility charm on himself, and he flew behind King Damontate of the north. Then he dropped the charm. When Broman enlarged himself and his dragon, both kings turned their dragons to get away from the enormous flame they knew was next. Browser used his opportunity and cut King Damontate from his dragon. King Damontate fell, and fell hard, but he was not dead yet. Many soldiers flew in to attack Browser after that. Bolter had put the large stick back on the fire. He looked around. He and Hoshman were not invisible. He turned to Hoshman and asked, "What's the girl's name, whose dragon is supposed to be the leader this time?" Hoshman told him. Bolton thought to Libya that he needed the charm that she put on the chamber of eggs. Libya was confused at first, and it was hard to concentrate on more than one thing, but she dutifully sent the thoughts. Bolton turned to Hoshman and told his plan. He asked Hoshman to send him magic if he needed it. Hoshman decided they should get the men inside before Bolton did it, and he realized that no one could bring in any injured this way, but he feared the soldiers landing again. Hoshman motioned around the circle inside the ring, and the men filed in. Then Bolton tried the charm. He said the words aloud so someone else could take over if he passed out. Hoshman realized right away, and he listened carefully to the words. Many of the words he hadn't heard before. In the air, soldiers were falling from dragons from both sides. Linkers were falling. Fights started on the ground. King Fate-Ride shook his head to himself. He decided to target the other king. He made motions, and several understood. Even Broman understood. Broman shrank himself and Hagar. They zoomed to the center of the circle with the second king. He enlarged himself and said the words for the really hot fire. For a really hot fire. King Damontate of the south turned back and met those who had circled him. His shoulder still hurt, but he tried not to pay it any mind, especially since his brother was already on the ground. He had peeked down several times, and his brother seemed to hold his own, and he had several soldiers around him helping him, but he didn't peek down now. And suddenly, Kilgore and Buncle rammed his dragon from both sides. Commander Kuchai had never ridden a dragon that purposely rammed another dragon, but he had his sword ready. Since the king had on armor, he aimed for the waistline, where the pieces of armor met. Commander Kuchai was surprised to see his blade come out the other side of the king. Then Kilgore sharply veered away before King Damontate of the south could even swing at Commander Kuchai. Nayli flew Nefton in, and he sprayed sharp rocks at the king. King Damontate raised his shield, but then Buncle flew into him again, and he fell from his dragon. His dragon had been much higher up, so he did not survive the fall. "No!" shouted King Damontate, and he started fighting harder. Volserath and his 2 sons were fighting against the 3 trackers, and they were pushing them back, though they came out in the mountain ring. One tracker slashed at Cabal, and the wound was fatal, but the tracker saw the anger in Volserath's eyes, and he turned to run. and run towards the tunnel entrance he had seen when he originally flew over the mountain ring. Bullerat finished off his enemy, and Cinder landed his dragon and started having his dragon breathe his breath towards the one running away. The tracker ran into the invisible wall and fell back. Cinder's dragon breathed fire breath, went over the tracker and hit the wall. Bolton screamed out in pain, and he jerked back. Hoshman had seen the dragon land, and he saw the breath. He started his own charm instead of sending magic to Bolton. Hoshman didn't know why the wall was see-through, but he didn't care at the moment. They weren't hiding eggs. They were protecting people. Cinder had his dragon breathe a second time, and to lower his head and breathe toward the ground. This time it worked. He looked over and saw that Valsaroth and Bullerat had finished off the third tracker. Cinder called, "Where's your dragon?" They indicated to the north, and Cinder offered them a ride. They took it, mounted their dragons, and rejoined the battle. Everyone's focus was on the battle on the ground, where King Damantade stood. Roman thought to King Faterite to think to his people and get them out of the circle. And then he thought to Frocques that this was his chance to strike for Lydia. King Faterite didn't want to retreat, but he sent the thoughts to back away some. Roman saw Frocques flying in, so he cast a charm on him, grow really big, and he thought the word "volley free" to him. Soldiers from both sides looked up and saw Frocques grow bigger. King Faterite's people backed up more and then turned around and ran away. Frocques was 1,000% bigger than his normal size, and he was having trouble flying, but he breathed his breath with the word, and boulders and rocks came out of his mouth for several minutes, and they rained down on the circle of soldiers around King Damantade, including King Damantade's brother, who was also lying on the ground in the circle. Then Frocques shrank to its normal size and straightened out his flight path. The remaining enemies paused as they took in the piles of rock that was quite tall. They didn't know if King Damantade could survive that or not. It seemed to stand off for the next several minutes as everyone caught their breath. The enemy soldiers, especially from King Damantade in the north, knew about all the soldiers on their own side that King Damantade had killed. They knew about the potions for the dragons. They also knew they weren't finding a lot of food, and several were hungry. King Faterite signaled to continue the battle, and everyone turned to their opponent, but many on King Damantade's side from the north turned and fled the battle. The soldiers from King Damantade from the south stayed and fought a little longer, but now the odds were more even, and the Linkers still had their charms, so soon they left too. They didn't know if they would fly to the kingdom in the north or to their own kingdom. As they flew south, they decided to fly to their own kingdom. King Faterite landed his dragon, Asimov, and he hurried into the tunnel. He ran into the wall and fell back. Hoshman dropped the charm and rushed out to apologize to the king. King Faterite just bounded up and down the tunnel to the chamber where he stayed. He burst in the chamber, and no one was there. "Soflin, where are you?" He looked around frantically. Jarvis thought with Felicity to see if she knew anything. Then he thought to King Faterite to follow him. Jarvis led King Faterite deep into the tunnels, and the torches were sparse, so Jarvis had sparkling lights show all around his body as he floated forward. King Faterite wanted to burst out into a run. He wanted to find his dear sweet wife, but he walked behind the tailor. Finally, they came to a chamber, and Jarvis motioned him in. King Faterite called out, "Soflin, my beautiful wife, are you in here?" Sylvie walked up to him. "She is resting. Do you want to hold your son?" Sylvie handed over the baby. "A boy? I have a son?" Tears of joy streamed down his face. "Oh, thank the universe. Is Soflin okay? How was the delivery?" "Easy, King Faterite," said Sylvie. "She is just fine. Vixie is cleaning her up. I cleaned up the baby. Find a seat and sit. You can see your wife in a bit." King Fayright leaned down and kissed the baby's cheek, and he gently bounced the baby as he looked around for a chair. After he sat down, he ran his hand around the baby's head. "Oh, this is so wonderful. I can't believe I'm a father." Jarvis was happy he stayed to mentor the king, and he thought it might be time for himself to find a second wife. Okay, writers, that is the end of chapter 26. Now, a quick side note: as I read this chapter in preparation for the channel, as I read, those are homographs, right? Read and read, they look the same. They're spelled the same. So, anyway, as I read this chapter in preparation for the channel, I found a tremendous number of errors. I fixed as many as I found. I found more as I read. The reality is that when I got into all the action, my fingers were flying over the keys, I made a lot of mistakes. It happens. First draft is not a final draft. It's a rough draft. And it's probably not even my first time rereading it. I probably have read it a couple of times since then. I know I reread it after I read it to break it into chapters. So you can't find all the mistakes every time. Sometimes you're reading for this or you're reading for that. Sometimes you're reading for, did I put in enough of this? What happened to this character? So you're trying to bring that all in and you don't realize the mistakes. There were mistakes. So, first draft is not final draft. If you have mistakes in your writing, don't feel bad about it. Don't be embarrassed about it. It's why we have readers. Readers help us to catch these mistakes. And readers can say, did you mean this? Is this supposed to be plural? Is this supposed to be singular? Is this supposed to say north or is it supposed to say south? You have readers that get into your work and they will help you find the mistakes. I have one reader. He knows when to use past versus past. And one is P-A-S-S-E-D and one is P-A-S-T. And he's tried to teach it to me. And it just doesn't go in my head. So, there's going to be mistakes, and hopefully your readers can catch it. And, but don't be embarrassed about it. Just keep going, keep writing, keep having fun, and edit. That's part of it. It's not the most fun part of things, but still, if you enjoy reading your own story, then editing is not as bad as it sounds. Okay, leave a comment on Nayli flying into fight and being a first line of defense. Like all the Linkers flying patrol, they were patrolling and they sent thoughts to the right people, so the people got into the cave, and then some of the men were standing around the entrance. But Nayli had her dragon and she flew into attack. So leave a comment on her being like a first line of defense. Leave a comment on Bolton trying to protect the tunnel. Would you have thought of the protection of the eggs? I mean, how would he have heard of it? Well, of course, Libya talks to Broman, and Broman talks to his dad. So there is that connection there, and that could have passed between them. He knew about that. But the question for you is, would you have thought of that charm? Or another question for you is, would you have thought of that charm? If you knew there was a charm to protect the tunnels or the caves with the eggs, would you have thought to use that charm? Leave a comment on if you think King Damon Tate, the younger son, survived all the falling rocks and boulders. Leave a comment on any other part of the story or the chapter that you would like. Join me Tuesday for vocabulary. Join me Friday for chapter 27, Elloni's Pride, Fighting for Freedom. That will be our last chapter of this story. And this is where I will get to tie up all loose ends, or hopefully I tie up all loose ends. Our next story hopefully will be ready in 2 or 3 weeks. And I still have I still had to pull out a plot so you can write with me and so we can exchange chapters. But I have 70,000 words on the story so far, and this genre is 80 to 120,000. So you could say I'm 10,000 words away from finishing, but I still have a life, and I still go to work, and I still dance with my husband, and so we'll see. Hopefully, if I don't finish, I can at least read through it and break it into chapters so that I can start reading the first couple of chapters while I'm finishing the story. And there's a crazy story with that. I was writing one story, it was Elementals, and I was writing that story, and I got it to 50-something thousand words. And then one day I was just, I was tired of working, and I wanted a break. And so I just got into this other story. And right now the title is Science versus Magic. I got into this other story, and all of a sudden it's just like, okay, I want to do this one. So I started writing on this story, and then while I was taking that break, it became like 50,000, and the other one was like 54. So they were really close. And I was like, which one do I want to finish? So I decided to finish the Science versus Magic one first, and then I'll go and finish Elementals second. So that's why I'm so far behind on finishing the story, because it's in the middle of it, I decided to go right on another one. And that's where my grandmother's advice would have helped me. Her advice was finish a project before you start another one. So I did not take my grandmother's advice. I leave comments on if you do things like that. If you stop in the middle of a project to go do something else or whatever, or if you get distracted. So leave those comments. Visit my website, bymichaela.com. Read some character bios. If you read something, leave a comment on which ones you have read. All your comments will help us start conversations, build our community. Like I always say, keep all comments respectful. Because somebody else's perspective will help you with your writing. You don't want to be negative against their comment. You want to take their comment and incorporate it into your story. Now, maybe you make them the antagonist. Maybe you put them on the protagonist side on somebody that doesn't toe the line. Or who knows what you do with their comments. Maybe it turns out that maybe their perspective becomes your hero. But don't bash anybody's comment. Take it. We are writers. We use what we see, what we have, to create stories with intriguing protagonists and delightful characters, or characters that people can get emotionally involved with. So that's our job, is to take what is around us, take the books that we read, take the movies that we watch, take the life, the people around us, see how they handle their life, how they think about things. I have a friend that you can't ruffle her feathers. She's happy all the time. And then, of course, I have another friend that she doesn't get stressed or frustrated. Like, okay, it happened. We have to handle it. So I have these different friends, and my friends give me different perspectives than what I have. So you take everything and use it. Be respectful in your comments, because you don't want to shut somebody else down, because then you won't get their comment. Then you won't get their perspective. Then you won't be able to incorporate that into your writing. And don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell so that you can write with me, and we can write together, and we can continue this journey. And other people will have a higher chance of finding this video and this channel, because your likes will push the video out to a greater audience. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your participation. If you know someone who would like this video, please share it with them. This is Michaela with Write with Michaela. Bye for now.